going on now is we're not weakening Iran in a sense where Iran will be weaker a year from now, 2 years from now. We have strengthened Iran. And we're strengthening Iran in multiple ways. So far, we've just been talking about bombs on target. My real specialty, Stephen, is the interaction of military action and politics. You are not just hitting an industrial target. People in the country, the population, the regime, they're reacting to that politically. And that reaction is tremendously important. And that's what I discovered in my work studying Vietnam in the 1980s, why the bombing campaign was failing, the political reactions by the population often are overwhelming the tactical military effects. So you can hit the target, you can destroy the industrial facilities, and in fact, you can energize the population to work even harder to overcome all that damage. And sometimes they have tremendous geographic advantages. In Vietnam, there was an area called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was where the logistics, where the ammo for the Viet Cong guerrilla fighters in the South were getting their ammo. And in the 1960s, we knocked out 80+% of the throughput of that pipeline, of that trail. You know what? It wasn't enough. And we ended up not being able to stop that little itty bitty bit of throughput that still could get through, and incentivize even more to get it through because they knew we couldn't stop it. And that is what fueled the VC and ultimately the Viet Cong, the guerrillas that we were really up against in Vietnam. That is what ultimately bolstered their morale. They knew we couldn't beat them. Even though we whittled them down by 80%, we couldn't get that last 15 or 20%. And that was what was energizing their morale.
So how does that apply to what's going on now? In simple terms, what's going on?
Iran has figured out that we can't beat them. That's what's going on, Stephen. They are figuring out that we can't beat them. We can bomb them. We can attack them. We could even threaten to murder all 92 million of them, which is the civilization threat by missiles.
Okay,
that Iran has, and it's probably bigger than that we can't knock out. See, we're able to knock out anything that's above ground. If there's a launcher and it's above ground, we can see it. We can see it with satellites. We can see it with other sensors as well. That thing is going to be gone in a few days. And that's what the air campaign that you've watched for 40 days is doing. When Secretary Hegseth or General Kane talk about hitting 11,000, 12,000 targets, these are targets, almost all of them, that are very clearly visible and above ground. This is true of the Navy ships as well. Well, guess what? The Iranians knew that was always going to be vulnerable. So what they've been doing is they have been not just deeply burying their industrial enrichment facilities, they've been deeply burying their arsenals of drones, deeply burying their arsenals of missiles. And so they are in a position where even though we are unleashing enormous amounts of air power against them, and we are technically superior, we can't stop their drone attacks against the ships in the Strait of Hormuz. They know it. They can use that to their advantage, and boy, are they using it to their advantage enormously.
Yesterday, Hegseth's response to the reporter was, Iran would be wise to find a way to get their carrier pigeon to the troops out in remote locations to let them know not to shoot any longer. It can sometimes take time for ceasefires to take hold, which was really alarming to me because it suggests that there is actually not a centralized leadership structure in Iran. And actually, if there's not a centralized leadership structure, how does one negotiate a ceasefire if there's lots of different factions doing lots of different things now? Is that true?
I would say it's probably decentralized. I think he's probably right about that.
I'm trying to figure out who in Iran is negotiating with America and why it doesn't seem to be the case that whoever's negotiating control the fact that people are still firing drones.
Oh, I see. Yeah, decentralization means chaotic and they can't actually make decisions. That's just not the case. The more you move up the chain of command, the more the leader can be the supreme leader, the son of the one we just killed. Oh, without a doubt. I think this idea that he's not there, there's absolutely no evidence of that. Yes, it's decentralized in the sense it's hard to find them, to target them. But by the way, Stephen, I think the reason that we're trying to talk smack about the supreme leader, is he alive, is he dead, is we're trying to goad him into revealing his location so we can kill him. But that's not working. And it's also not stopping Iran from putting out 10 points to Pakistan in the negotiations. It's not stopping Iran from having messages that go through Pakistan to the White House. President Trump is then agreeing to the 10 points that are coming from Iran, you see. And then later on, of course, President Trump is taking it back. But the bottom line is what you're seeing in terms of chaotic decision-making, far more chaotic decision-making is happening in the White House in the United States than is happening in the government of Iran. Their rising power in the region as our power is declining precipitously.
What do you think happens next?
We are at a fork in the road. When I was here last time, I was walking you through the 3 stages of the escalation trap, and you kept pushing me, tell me more, tell me more. I was a little bit reluctant to do that. Well, there is a stage 4.
For anyone that didn't hear that episode, could you give us a one sentence on stage 1?
Stage 1 is America bombs, does leadership change bombing. We hit targets, kill leaders, but the regime actually evolves and is stronger than before. Stage 2 is that then stronger regime lashes back with horizontal escalation and takes the Strait of Hormuz, at least initially takes the Strait of Hormuz. And then stage 3 is that's the ground option to start to take the Strait of Hormuz back. And that's exactly what you saw play out in the first several weeks of the war. Stage 3 was about the Marines. The Marines hadn't even moved yet. And I'm telling you, the Marines are likely going to move. There's going to be movement to ground options in stage 3 here very rapidly in this war. At that point in time, when we had our first discussion, you wanted to push for the future. And I said, no, we need to wait. And the reason, Stephen, is because what you're not seeing with me is throwing random darts at the future. I'm doing risk assessment out about as far as you can have stable predictions. And in war, that usually means 2, 3, 4 weeks. It doesn't mean we can say where we'll be a year from now. Here, though, now that we're in 40 days, we're at a different point. We've clearly passed stage 1. We're past stage 2, where they control the Strait of Hormuz. We've bellied up to stage 3, the ground operations. Now we're at a branch, a fork in the road. There's no way to go back to February 27, which is the pre-war period that many people would love to go back to. I, too, would like to go back to February 27. That's not the future. What happens at this point on in the modeling is a branch. Either we go through with the ground war, or Iran becomes an emerging, not right away, 4th center of world power. That is the branch that we face now. This branch is becoming more evident hour by hour.
Explain that to me.
So everybody now
taking
knows
it
a step further. That's not just about insurance rates of shipping. That's generating political power for Iran to get other states to kowtow to it, to accept its objectives. What are those objectives? So let's talk about how this affects, say, Asia. So I'm going to get into global, and then we'll come back to the Gulf itself. So the shipping that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, 80 to 90% of it is going right to Asia. The power that comes with that is with, say, India. India is not siding with the United States. India is at best neutral, and maybe even a little bit more edging toward Iran. Well, before this, you could imagine that the United States and India would be much more cooperative here. That's not what's occurring. And why is that? It's because that oil that's going into Asia, for India, this isn't just about the price of oil. This is about the supply of oil. When you lose literally all the supply, That is a greater cost than simply having to pay more for it. So India is in a much more difficult situation than Europe and the United States right now. Now look at Japan. Notice in the Oval Office, President Trump brought in the head of state of Japan and basically browbeat her. And she still wouldn't budge. She still would not kowtow to Trump here and actually provide military support. What did she do? She's distancing herself from the United States. That's exactly what Iran wants out of America's Asian allies. This is geopolitical power, and it's rooted in the control of Hormuz. It's rooted in the selective military blockade. That selective military blockade produces vulnerability to India, vulnerability to Japan. And that is what we call it the leverage, but the leverage is not enough of a full description. This is reorienting America's allies in Asia. Now, let's talk about what's happening in the Persian Gulf itself. Before the war, February 27, there was essentially a balance in the Persian Gulf where you had Iran on one side and you had this growing collection of Gulf states that were part of an emerging web. They're cooperating with Israel more and more on different issues. President, what's happened after 40 days is this is breaking down fast. America has military bases in Qatar, has military bases in Bahrain, has military bases in Kuwait. I'm just picking a few, and military base, of course, in Saudi Arabia. These military bases, they are producing little leverage here against Iran. In fact, our aircraft carriers are not anywhere near the Persian Gulf. They're 1,000 miles away. These bases are big fat targets. They are above ground. Iran's precision drones can hit things above ground, and they're doing it on those bases. That was their immediate retaliation. What's happening, number one, is the military anchor of this coalition started to disappear within hours of the bombing on February 28th.
What do you mean by the military anchor?
In order to have this coalition work,